And at this moment, we go live to Cuba because the march is underway commemorating the 32 heroes that gave their lives in defense of Venezuela. We've seen the heroes come back to their nation land just yesterday, and this is the act that is taking place in Havana in the Anti-Imperialist Tribune. Let's listen to what is happening.
En el mismo lugar que tiempos más atrás cayeron otros sin nombre. A los héroes se les recuerda sin llanto, se les recuerda en los brazos, se les recuerda en la tierra, y eso me hace pensar que no han muerto al final y que viven allí donde haya un hombre presto a luchar.
These are images from Havana. We're looking at the seaside of the historical and classic Malecón as we see the people that are mobilizing in honor of the 32 fallen heroes of Cuba that have been returned to their homeland after giving their lives in defense of Venezuela. They were Cuban combatants that had been assigned on a special mission in Venezuela, and they happened to be there for the attacks of January 3rd, the imperialist attacks that ended with the kidnapping of the constitutional president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro. In their honor is this march that we are seeing at this moment. Let's continue to listen to what is happening.
No quiere arepas, vino por algo más caro, no quiere romperse solo, quiere hacer trizas mi santo. Si no estamos solos, no perdamos todo, conectados pueblo a pueblo. Dispararon contra el alma de los sueños más humanos, garras arañando el cielo del pueblo bolivariano, y estallaron en los cerros los humildes liberados por la historia y por la sangre de Chávez resucitados. Pecho da un zarpazo, ciega de odio y codicia, vino a sembrar el espanto, creyendo que lograría luz y sueños apagarnos, y encendió los corazones de la pasión y del canto. Canto de luz y verdad, canción del enamorado, vencedora de la muerte, que seguiremos cantando, que seguiremos cantando. ¡Vamos! Toma mi mano, pueblo a pueblo, pecho a pecho, somos hermanos. Venezuela, cantemos a pueblo a pueblo, pecho a pecho, mano a mano. Cuba contigo, Venezuela, toma mi mano, pecho a Venezuela, conectados, pueblo a pueblo, pecho a pecho, mano a mano. Si no estamos solos, no perdamos todo. Conectados, pueblo a pueblo, pecho a pecho, mano a mano. Somos hermanos. Si no estamos solos, Venezuela, estamos contigo. Todos conectados, pueblo a pueblo, pecho a pecho, mano a mano. Solos no perdamos todo, conectados, pueblo a pueblo, pecho a pecho, mano a mano. Si no estamos otra vez solos, no perdamos todo, conectados, pueblo a pueblo, pecho a pecho, mano a mano. Estamos contigo, Venezuela.
We're looking at images of the Cuban Malecón, and this is the march that honors and pays tribute to the 32 fallen Cuban combatants in Venezuela that fought against the U.S. imperialist attack that led to the kidnapping of the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro. We are seeing the site of the anti-imperialist tribune, the iconic place just before the U.S. embassy. Let's listen to what is happening over there.
Con la fuerza del ejemplo de los 32 héroes cubanos caídos en el cumplimiento del deber en la hermana República Bolivariana de Venezuela.
We're looking at some of the statements that are happening.
Por la solidaridad y por la hermandad entre nuestros pueblos.
These are the statements.
No se borra.
Let's listen to what is happening. In every step that we take, at the beginning of the topics, we were listening to one of the iconic songs from Raúl Torres and Fidel Díaz Castro, and performed by Cuban musicians, a beautiful song dedicated to the solidarity and brotherhood between Cuba and Venezuela. This march is also a form of denouncing the economic and financial blockade we have been targeted with for over 60 years and hostile aggressions in the past days from President Trump and Marco Rubio. In the face of those aggressions, Cuba is responding with unity, with firmness, and with a certainty that we will always prevail. Heading this March of the Combatant People, the first Secretary of the Communist Party of Cuba and President of the Republic, Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermúdez. The commander of the rebellious army, members of the political party, leaders of the party, the state, the Union of Youth, and other associations, civil associations, the Revolutionary Armed Forces, and Ministry of the Interior. Together with its people, the main leaders of the party and the country here in the capital. We are also honored with the presence of the family members of those heroes that fell in the fulfillment of their duty in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. We ratify from this tribune that Cuba is maintaining firm with its principles of independence and international solidarity. Cuba is faithful to the memory of its martyrs and its sons and daughters. Cuba is faithful to the thought and legacy of Commander Fidel Castro Ruz in the year of his centenary and the teachings of Raúl Castro Ruz, who have educated us and told us that the dignity of the people is not negotiated, and we are going to defend it till the last drop of blood. To pronounce the main address of this act, the first Secretary of the party and also President of the Republic, Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermúdez. Honor and glory to our fallen heroes, fallen in combat, family members, comrades, and friends of our combatants, compatriots. January 3rd of 2026, at the darkest times of that beginning of the day, as the people were sleeping, that attack was ordered by the President of the United States, Donald Trump. The sentence of Bolívar was confirmed in his homeland, that the United States were destined by providence to bring destruction in the name of freedom, and that in imperialism we could not trust. Those were the words of El Che. Bombs and kidnapping were the answer from the United States to the statements of the President of Venezuela, who just hours before had showed himself willing to dialogue. That was a difficult night for Cuba. We got the first news of the attacks against several states of the brother country, where we have hundreds of Cuban collaborators. Those were very tough times, with impotence and anger after we found out that President Nicolás Maduro Moros and his wife Cilia Flores had been kidnapped. We have our courageous and members and combatants, and we know them and we know of their courage. We knew even confirmed this, that they would have behaved as they did even in their last battle. Only over my corpse will they be able to take the precedent that was said many times by the first colonel chief of that small group of Cubans that on those hours protected the president. And they gave their lives. They, together with the combatants of the Revolutionary Armed Forces who also fell in that moment, they show in their hours of services all their qualities that are common in heroes, Cuban heroes. In that way, they transpassed the frontiers, the national borders, for a united Latin America, the dream of Bolívar and Martí. The mortal remains of our 32 compatriots arrived here to the homeland as eternal soldiers of that integration that we owe each other. That is the character of Cubans. Continue fighting for that dream of Bolívar and Martí, and that relationship that was forged between Fidel y Chávez, leader of regional integration, that brought literacy, healed sight diseases, and brought all these things to Venezuelans and many other inhabitants of Latin America and the Caribbean. The promoters of the attack and kidnapping of President Maduro and his wife appealed to the methods of fascism, defamation against the Bolivarian leaders, even before launching cowardly against Venezuela, leaving behind all the limits of international law that until that day guaranteed a minimal coexistence. The administration of the United States has opened a barbaric era, a fascist era, without caring about what that can mean in terms of destruction and death. The news of the attack hit the world. For over 25 years, we have shared deeds in the building of that future and a better world on the roads of socialism, but every country with its own methods and differences. Only those who do not understand friendship, solidarity, cooperation between the peoples are not able to understand that relationship between Cuba and Venezuela, or only understand it as a mere interchange of business. Before everything else, Cuba and Venezuelans are brothers and sisters. And we'll give our own blood for our brotherly nations, and that can estrange anyone but not Cubans. And we have deep admiration for this deep and group of people who offered all the resistance for the kidnappers, and they even managed, till what we know right now, managed to contain one of their means of transportation. These people were protected by different war machines and instruments. And this was what the United States told the world is not the reality. They could not even deny that various of the attackers were hurt. Our combatants, with their conventional armed weapons and with deep commitment to their mission, they fought until death, and they gave it their all. They were military of honors formed in the ethical school of Fidel and Raúl against imperialism. They carried the legacy and are heirs of Maceo, not willing to negotiate peace without freedom. And they will maintain the saying that no one will surrender here. The current emperor in the White House and his Secretary of State have not stopped threatening us. I don't think that more pressure can be exercised, and the extreme levels to which the blockade has been increased to come here and destroy the place. That is what their imperial conception trying to subjugate us to. And this phrase has brought outrage to the people of Cuba. And this can only be understood in a country that has never promoted hate. Cuban patriotism was expressed by Martí very early on. The love that is mother of the homeland, it's not love for a piece of land. It's the hate to whoever wants to oppress it. It's the hate towards anyone who will attack it. The people of Cuba is not anti-imperialist because of a handbook. Imperialism made us anti-imperialists. But not just Cuba. The world itself will be more and more anti-imperialist after the assault against international law, the assault against human dignity and intelligence, that this act of prepotence in which a country is attacked by an empire that looks down on all the other nations. The victories of the Cuban people are associated with its firmness. Whenever we have united our patriotic forces, we have conquered victory, and our enemies know this well. That is why they try to break this unity. Their threats, current threats, they recall past threats before those sectors that are pushing for war. Do they know that our revolutionary strategy of defense was born in the face of the worst threats of those same sectors? Do they know about the previous attacks like that have failed in any attempt to breach that leadership? In the last days, the youth in Cuba have continued to look at that Cuba lived and narrated by Fidel. And one of those narrations was bringing this idea that in this way we need to act in the face of the empire that is threatening Cuba. But I insist and I reiterate this data. These are Cuban youth who have made these videos and these narrations viral in social networks. Here we have not one, but millions of those who will continue the deeds of Fidel and Raúl and that generation. They would have to kidnap millions or disappear us from the map, and even then, the ghost of this small island nation will continue to run through the world because they will not be able to subjugate it. No, Mr. Imperialists, we will not subjugate ourselves, and we do not like to be threatened. That is what Fidel said. Just as our national symbols show, our unity is the most powerful weapon of our revolution. Dear compatriots, various of our comrades are at this moment now here in the homeland with the medals and honors that they received. One of them, Lieutenant Jorge Marquez, he carried out and he continued fighting with his gun even while he was wounded in one leg. That courage is the word with which all of them are describing their attitude in the way they confronted the aggressors. One of the other examples, one of our comrades who led the rescue of those who were hurt. And one of the deceased, his last words were, "Long live Cuba." When it seems that the world is trying to bury its last utopia, and that humanity is just being tired, in that instant, in that moment, 32 Cuban combatants and giving their lives, and they become giants in that last breath. There are no capable enemies to confront that heroism. The true youth of most of those who have fallen in combat are bringing us those verses of Martí to the healthcare students who were murdered by Spain. Beloved corpses, those who you wear from my homeland. All of what we know from their personal story of their bravery and their love, their commitment, the consolidation of the way that they faced combat, that makes the pain even worse, but that even strengthens patriotism of Cubans even more. Today we have 32 more faces, 32 more stories for that legacy and that idea of Martí that the homeland is humanity. They did not just defend the sovereignty of Venezuela and the integrity of President Nicolás Maduro and Cilia Flores, but also the peace, the honor of Cuba and our America. They were the sword of our peoples in the face of the advance of fascism, and they will be forever a symbol, a testament that there is no small people if their dignity is so firm. Thank you for the courage. Thank you for the example. We are now embracing their loved ones, mothers, fathers, wives, sons and daughters, granddaughters, grandparents, their friends as well. Pain is not shared, our commander-in-chief used to say. Pain multiplies, and when a people is crying, injustice is shivering. Silvio used to sing that injustice should shiver, should quiver. Cuba does not pose any threats. Cuba is a land of peace. Here in Havana, and through a Cuban initiative years ago in the second CELAC summit, we proclaimed Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. That was a conquest that was completely trespassed by that attack in Venezuela. That initiative of peace will not prohibit us from that initiative of combat in defense of our sovereignty and our integrity. We would continue to fight with that fierceness of our past generations since the independence wars, since the Sierra Maestra guerrilla, from the wars in Africa and until Caracas in this 21st century. There's no surrender, no claudication with coercion or intimidation. Cuba does not need to make any concession. It's important that you understand this. We will always be open to dialogue and to the betterment of the relationships between the United States and Cuba, but on the basis of mutual respect. This has been like this for over 6 decades, and history will not be different at this moment. To the empire that is threatening us, we say, Cuba, we're millions. We are a people that are willing to fight if they attack us with the firmness of those 32 Cubans who fell and gave their lives. Compatriots, let's march united for the memory of this example, and let's commit ourselves to homeland or death. Homeland or death, we will win. Forever onward with victory.
Te convido a creerme cuando digo futuro. Si no crees mi palabra, cree la angustia de un grito. Cree en la tierra, cree en la lluvia, cree en la savia. Te convido a creerme cuando digo futuro. Si no crees en mis ojos, cree el brillo de un gesto. Cree en mi cuerpo, cree en mis manos.
Y con este sentido homenaje a los
Of President Miguel Diaz-Canel before the march that is honoring the 32 fallen Cuban combatants killed during the United States attacks on Venezuela, killed defending the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, and his wife, First Lady, and also member of the National Assembly, Cilia Flores, defending them from the kidnapping that the United States orchestrated and carried out. These 32 Cuban combatants gave their lives, and among the words, key statements of President Miguel Diaz-Canel, who is now leading the march that is leaving the anti-imperialist tribune, that iconic place in the Malecón that is just in front of the United States Embassy, that symbolic place from where the Cuban president reiterated that Cuba does not back down in the face of imperialist threats. He addressed not only the great and severe attack that the United States carried out against international law in Venezuela against the President Nicolás Maduro, but also he addressed the threats that Donald Trump and Marco Rubio have been issuing against Cuba. He stated that once again, Cubans do not like being threatened, that they are, as they have always been for the past 6 decades, open to dialogue only on the condition that it may be done on the basis of mutual respect between the nations and no other conditions. He was pointing out at the fierceness and the bravery of those combatants who fell on that night, those early hours of January 3rd, who gave their lives on that mission, protecting, in that case, the sovereignty of Venezuela, but with the sovereignty of Venezuela, also the integrity of the entire region, also protecting and giving their lives on the defense of the proclamation that the president was just highlighting was issued in Havana in 2014, and through a Cuban initiative, the proclamation of the entire region as a zone of peace. We're looking at these images of the Cuban people who are now beginning that march after hearing those remarks led by President Miguel Diaz-Canel. A moment of mourning and a moment of pain, but also a moment of confirming and reaffirming the revolutionary commitment. He was also stating that that revolutionary legacy